For the Chi-East Chamber of Commerce, I'm Wayne Lawrence. Whether you're a fellow entrepreneur, an aspiring business owner, or someone who simply wants to understand what it takes to build something from the ground up, this podcast is for you. We're going to dive in, get honest, and maybe even laugh a little about how chaotic and beautiful being an entrepreneur is. And a shout out to New Image Media for sponsoring this episode. Today, I'm joined with Larry Fulton, founder of Fulton Equity, a Cleveland-based holding company that invests in lower middle market businesses. Think about companies doing $5 million to $50 million revenue. Larry, welcome to the podcast. Let's go dive into it. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. I'm doing really well. So, hey, you've been behind the curtain on dozens of businesses. You've seen the good, the bad, the ugly spreadsheets. You've seen everything that's regarding business. How did you get involved in that? Because you didn't own a business from day one. So give us your journey a little bit.
All right. So my journey actually started back in high school.
Okay.
I went to high school in Orangeburg Wilkinson High School in South Carolina, Orangeburg, South Carolina. When I graduated, I knew I wanted to be in business. I just didn't really know specifically what type of business and how I was going to go into business. But I majored in business in undergrad at Florida A&M University in Tallahassee. And I did a couple of internships. My first job actually was coming to Cleveland. So I was born in Cleveland, so I came back to Cleveland to live with my grandparents and their two family for the sole purpose of saving my money so that I could eventually I was thinking at that time, start or acquire my first business. And so years after being in corporate, 14 years doing multiple types of finance-related jobs and then running my own division with a major Fortune type business, I then had enough resources to buy my first company.
Okay.
And I did that in 2003.
Okay. So you actually are one of the people who have a plan in mind. So you said, I'd like to own a business one day. And then you actually saved to get there and then bought your own business. So may I ask, what'd you dive into at first? What was your first business?
Well, it's interesting because when I worked at KeyBank, I was an underwriter and I saw hundreds of deals, and I wound up, fortunately, becoming an underwriter for the SBA, the Small Business Administration. And during that time, I saw thousands of transactions, and so I was allowed to look at all these different markets, all these different industries, and I wanted a business that had recurring revenue, that didn't necessarily have a concentration on a particular market, that was relatively low concentration in terms of technology, employee concentration, lower CapEx. And so I winded up doing my first acquisition was a pallet manufacturing business. It was an Amish, Middlefield, Ohio-based pallet manufacturing business that met all that criteria. And I was very excited to do that first deal. And lo and behold, I bought that in 2003. And then really quickly thereafter, I bought a crating business, which is a very similar type of structured business, and merged those two businesses together to form Lefco Industries back in 2003, 2005.
So when you got into Lefco Industries and bought that pallet business, were you at that time still thinking more businesses? Did you realize at that point you were going to probably have your own equity fund and invest in multiple companies?
Yes.
You did? Okay.
Yes.
Because most of us are just trying to get that business going.
I mean, principally because now it took a number of years, right? But principally, I just saw so many transactions and I saw how people were doing it on the PE side. Really, during my tenure at the SBA, we were hoping and helping and working and training entrepreneurs on how to do deals and how to structure transactions. We would make presentations to different private equity firms as well about the SBA's offerings. Okay. And that just gave me a really good understanding of what's out there. Yeah. And how come I'm not able to do that?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
How come I'm not doing that?
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. So, why aren't you doing that? Yeah. Essentially, most small businesses, obviously the thing behind this is blessing or curse. We all have blessings or curses within our business. And, most small businesses are just thinking about it from that company or what their task is at hand. How do you, has overall it been a blessing or curse? Because you have individual blessings, multiple of them, and individual curses. So kind of walk us through how this entire journey has been from that standpoint.
So how long do we have now?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, all right.
So kind of walk me through how to answer this question.
Yeah.
So first, I'd say overall, it's definitely been a blessing.
Okay.
A significant blessing for my family, a significant blessing for my career. I don't feel like I'm working. I'm doing what I love, what I'm meant to do. Right? I just want to do more of it.
Right.
Individually, when you look at like individual transactions, I've had some ups, some downs, just like any entrepreneur does every day, right? And for me, I'm pretty hands-on. I don't just make an investment and then put an operator in place and then say, okay, we'll meet quarterly, right? Or meet monthly to look at metrics. I'd like to do that, but I'm very hands-on. So I am there, boots on the ground every day, working with either the general manager or the president that's running that operation. And obviously looking at metrics, but because I'm there every day, I'm looking at employee turnover, customer churn, customer concentration, supplier concentration issues, what's the problem of the day, what's the problem of the week, not necessarily just strategic initiatives, but operational problems as well. I've had a number of issues where employees don't show up to work, and I'm not there to solve that problem, but because I am there a lot of the times, I'm helping to solve those types of issues, posting positions. Being very active in the day-to-day operation. Matter of fact, the business that I just bought in March, we need a general manager. And so I'm working with our HR person now to really get her up to speed in terms of what I'm looking for, but also, just the operational and HR related needs of the business. And so who does that? I can bring in a subject matter expert to do that,
right.
But I'd rather do that because I have that in my skill set as well.
So as you look at these businesses then, so you're, are most of the management team staying with you, or they are? So they're staying with you initially, and then you're putting in metrics. The one thing you've taught me over the years since I've known you is the word metrics. Measure. Because you don't know if you can define success unless you're measuring what you're doing. So for those who are listening right now or watching, understand, put metrics in place and see how you're doing so you can judge that. But anyway, so you hold them accountable to these metrics, and then you still have to at some point let people go if they're not reaching your goals. What's that been like across multiple businesses?
Well, I'd say this, that definitely I love to keep the current owner or the current management team in place. I think that is wildly beneficial for the continuity of the business.
Do most of the owners want to stay, or are they retiring?
It kind of depends individually.
Gotcha.
I'd love to keep the owner in place.
Okay.
Like the deal that we just did in March, again, the owner is going to remain in place for a number of years. And just that ease of transition for the employees, very, very smooth. And so that helps continuity, right? Metrics, things like looking at revenue or revenue compared to the number of employees that you might have, obviously financial profitability metrics. There's a number of safety or EHS related metrics that you can look at from a business perspective. But when you monitor those metrics and you have consistent data and then historical data to measure against, that just really allows you to really properly determine how the performance of the business is really looking, right?
Yeah.
Because you have the metrics, you can easily or more easily determine if you're on the right path or not.
Right. Okay.
Right. And so for an example, if you're looking at either a cash flow metric or a gross margin type metric, either dollar or percentage wise, you can say this quarter or this month or even this week, which I like to do on a weekly basis, that something is happening and then I need to make some tweaks here or there.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we've all had incidences where an individual doesn't lead the business correctly or doesn't implement the strategy that you've laid out or agreed on. That just unfortunately happens. And so it's never a good thing to let someone go, but that's a hard conversation that we have to have.
Okay.
I think for me individually, having compassion, having understanding, along with being driven, has to go hand in hand. So you really have to meet the person where they are, but you're a student, you're a person that's responsible. It's very prudent for you to be responsible for the business, and so you have to always make decisions that are going to be best for the business. Because with all these businesses, because you're a steward of that business, you're responsible for all of those employees, not just that individual.
So your target is at 5 million to 50 million range, lower middle market. What are some of the red flags that just kill a deal?
Oh my gosh!
Because you've looked at a lot of them.
Yes. I'll just spitfire a few.
And this is probably for the people who are listening, who are even thinking about positioning their companies for sale or acquisition. Down the road.
Exactly.
So help them
out. Right. Yeah. So I'd say first and foremost, if your business is not trending the right way, right, financially. So if revenues are declining, not necessarily increasing, there better be a really good story as to why that's happening. If there's an over-reliance on a particular customer or a particular supplier, or even what most people don't even think about, a particular employee, especially around an owner, right? And I call that, heavy owner reliance or dependency. And you really don't want that from a buyer's perspective. You want to delegate as much responsibility. If you're an owner, you want to delegate that responsibility to your key employees, and you want to build a team that's supported with standardized operating procedures and not necessarily tribal knowledge, which a lot of companies have. But I can go on and on and on about that. That's a subject matter.
Yeah. So in other words, don't wing it. And I think a lot of small businesses, think that's what happens. You get in it, you go day to day and you wing it. You don't have a plan in place. You don't measure against your results and those type of things too. And then something unexpected happens and it catches you quicker in a sense. Every business owner and marketer knows the challenge: getting high quality video, animation, and photography fast and without a hassle or red tape. Like me, that's why they turn to my friends at New Image Media. They don't just create content, they become an extension of your marketing team. Whether it's social media content, a brand story video, or product showcase, they make content creation effortless. See why so many of my friends love working with them at newimagemedia.com. Let's flip the script a little bit. So now, what advice do you give young business owners or anyone who has a young business who would like to be in that middle market down the road? What do you tell them to do? What do they focus on to get there?
There's obviously just a number of things. Yeah. One, I would say personally, you want to look at your net worth statement, right? A lot of us focus on our credit statement, which is really important.
Yeah.
Right. So focus on your credit statement, but you want to also look at your net worth statement, because your net worth is going to determine obviously your assets compared to your liabilities. But then when you do that equation, assets less minus liabilities equals your net worth. And so the more net worth that you have, the more a bank is going to lend to you, right?
Yeah.
You want to look at your credit, net worth. You want to look at your capacity, your ability to take on additional debt as well, and work on those things. You also want to take a look at, understanding what bankers look for from a collateral standpoint. And so that collateralization is really important. And it's not just your personal collateral, it's also the business collateral as well. So you want to look at the strength of the business that you're currently operating, or the strength of the business that you want to acquire from a quality of revenue standpoint. And what I mean by that is recurring revenue. Unfortunately, it always trumps project-related revenue in most senses, right? You want to look at margins and profitability of the business, and like I said earlier, the trajectory of the business. And if you're really gung-ho on being in business and looking at it from an acquisition standpoint, is you want to prepare yourself mentally, and the people around you need to really support you. So for an example, if you have a significant other, a wife or a husband, girlfriend, boyfriend, you want to make sure that they're going to support you, because that individual can singularly make or break you if they don't really support your goals and objectives. Absolutely. Because being an entrepreneur is not an easy task. It's not something that you just kind of fall in. Well, maybe you can fall into it, but there's going to be required a lot of sacrifice and waking up and dealing with stress and firing people, like we just talked about, hiring people, which is extraordinary, growing businesses, watching businesses fail, watching businesses do good, but also do poorly, but then really being in a position to you're the person accountable for not just the business itself as an entity, but any employees that work for that business and work for you as well.
So let's talk about that support mechanism, because I agree with you 100%. If you don't have it, it makes it tougher. And the other thing is you just don't have a person or persons to turn to. So who do you turn to? I would say when you're not working, but you're always looking for deals. So you have to work 24/7 in a sense and think about your business. What do you turn to? Who do you turn to for support?
Well, I'd say I built two different advisory groups, one that's specific to the primary business that I have today, and then a general advisory group. And so this team really helps me strategically. They help me think through problems that maybe I've encountered as in the past, right? Nothing really is new. I've seen trends and just repetition of issues, but it's how you deal with the individual issues that you're faced with. So I have a couple of advisory boards. My wife, who is also my business partner, she is incredible. She happens to be our general counsel for Fulton Equity, but I certainly talk to her as well. I've been able to be so fortunate to have 3 children that I've raised. 2, we're trying to position to be in the business. But the third is doing something completely different, which is great for her.
Right.
So I certainly talk with them, and then I pray also a lot.
So you're building this legacy, I guess, for yourself in a sense. Let's kind of take a more fun approach. What's a ridiculous pitch you've ever heard, but you admire the fact they had the audacity to even give the pitch? You don't have to be specific, but have you come across that sometimes?
Well, I was I just went out of state to look at a business last month.
Okay.
And it was interesting because everything on the surface looked very professional. It actually went through a professional firm. And it was interesting because when I talked to the banker, he said, "We're doing this as a favor to a company friend." And I said, okay, well, that's interesting. So on the front side, the numbers look great. Forecasts look tremendous. Margins look wonderful. And so I took a trip to Georgia to take a look at this business. Nothing as presented was as presented in person. I mean, nothing. And I thought, oh my gosh, I mean, it was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. A colossal waste of my time and effort in the trip down there. The organization was in complete shambles. The employees, the procedures, the facility, the plant, the organization itself. When I got the updated internal financials in person, it was completely different than what was originally presented. So you certainly do have cases where people will present something to you, either through an intermediary that's not necessarily accurate. And so that brings me to a point called due diligence. And you do due diligence when you're buying a house, when you're buying a car, when you're hopefully getting married. You certainly need to do due diligence when you're buying a business. That's the one time that you'll ever get a chance to research the business before you buy it. And acquiring a business is the single largest transaction that you could possibly do in your life for most cases. And so you want to do proper due diligence, looking at the legal, looking at the tax, looking at the operational, right, due diligence, and financial due diligence. So those are the 4 kind of key pillars with looking at a due diligence of a business. And if you don't know how to do due diligence, you want to bring in experts, subject matter experts that really could help you do that, right?
You ever just go with your gut?
All the time. All the time. Okay. Yeah, all the time.
So
however, I do support my gut with data.
Okay.
So I support my gut with data, but all the times I have an intuitive, an intuition kind of factor that plays into it.
On something as your gut kind of pulls you over or say yes or no, right?
And it's interesting because my wife was telling me about maybe a month ago that I need to learn how to listen to my gut even more.
Okay.
Because I'll see a candidate, for an example, and I want to hire this person, and maybe there's something missing from the resume or our conversation, but my gut is saying no, or my gut might be saying yes, right? And there's a reason why that just happens, right? So, yeah, but I do.
And I think most business owners have to kind of listen to their gut, but it's still going to be based on that data, as you said. We can't keep doing the same thing wrong and expect it to turn around that way. It doesn't happen that way. The other thing too is, and I'm going to touch upon this a little bit more, the idea of building a support mechanism around you. I remember when I was earlier on in my business, I remember sitting down with you and our good friend Wes Gillespie, who at that point was a little I guess just starting
a banking. A lowly banker at that point.
He's running a bank as a president.
Right.
Good to him. I'm gonna give him a shout out too and I remember us sitting around and just talking business. We talked about our businesses and we shared a lot too. We would share financials, we would share like what things we were going through, and I just remember it helping me make decisions across the board for that. So I would say that is probably one of the first things that people should put together.
It's almost like a quasi-advisory group.
It is, yeah.
Right.
Just for that, because otherwise it's going to feel like an island. All right. So what have you spent money on and just said, I wish I had that money back?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'll say this. I did make an acquisition back in 2018 of a fiberglass manufacturing business. And I was able to sell that business, and so I got out of that deal okay. But during the course of that, there were so many things that went wrong. Now, there were a lot of things that went right as well, but there were so many things that went wrong. Around a personnel standpoint, we lost several of our general managers. It was very difficult, and all this happened around COVID. So it was some outside factors that we really just could not control. But during that COVID issue or time period, specifically 21, 22, and 23, it was hard for us to get employees, hard for us to really motivate labor at that particular point in time. It wasn't a money factor. We just couldn't get people in the door, and they just wouldn't stay. And so we had demand from our customers. Supply was actually not disturbed because of supply chain or logistics type issues. We were able to get our materials, but we just couldn't get the labor, the trained labor specifically, to help make the product. And so we had cash flow challenges because we had bills to pay, didn't have the person or the people to make the product, so we couldn't make our shipments. It was just a cascade of issues. And so I was spending, I'm not going to say how much, but I was spending a lot of money.
Right, yeah.
And it was just, it took years to kind of make that loss up essentially. And I wish I had that time back for sure. But it was a huge learning experience.
And I don't know very many entrepreneurs that haven't faced even payroll coming up and going, oh, wow.
Oh, crap. I got payroll.
That's bigger than what I have over here.
That's right.
And then
happens.
You just got to do what you do to figure it out. You got to have, lines of credits or things that can actually help you get there. But you can only go so long before you're out of business. So you have to work on that part of it as well. Any associations? I see you in Cranes, Cleveland. They feature you a lot. I know you get recognized by manufacturing publications. Congratulations. Any associations you're involved with that's been helpful for you, or even sit on the board?
Yeah. I do sit on the board of Magnet.
Okay.
I sit on the board of Jumpstart.
Okay.
And I think that's all the associations that I'm presently on. I'm actually have wanted to expand my interests, but more so operating boards versus nonprofit boards. But manufacturing associations like Magnet, for an example, which is a manufacturing association. It's almost like a consultancy for small businesses or medium-sized businesses here in Northeast Ohio. And Jumpstart is very similarly structured. Mm-hmm. It's almost like a consultancy venture capital investment arm for small businesses as well.
Yeah, and I would encourage people within the who follow the Cayuse Chamber to go to his educational series on the website, because there's a lot of people there also giving advice and just sharing their knowledge when it comes to resources out there in the market. And it's good to see you giving back by doing that, because you're even within Jumpstart or Magnet, any of the new companies coming into town. You're putting them in the right direction, giving them a leg up that most people wouldn't have. So that's really admirable of you. And then when you're not working, what are you doing?
Wow, that's the question.
Yeah.
So, for an example, I do a lot of projects around the house.
Okay, good. All right.
Last year, we just put in a new deck. I helped a little bit with that. I'm putting in a new driveway.
Okay.
Actually today, but the crew's doing that. I'm not doing that. I'm kind of overseeing
you're doing
it.
The podcast.
Right. I'm just kind of trying to hang out with my family.
Good. Well, Larry, thanks for hanging out with us today. And
yeah, thanks for the invite.
It's been very valuable. I know that people are going to be listening and watching. They're going to have their notepads and pens, or they're going to have their notes on their phone, and they're just going to try to learn, because if they don't, shame on them, because the knowledge you just gave everyone and your experiences, it's just certainly something that you can't even go by at this point. So I really appreciate you sharing all those things. And to our listeners, whether you're building your first startup or managing a growing portfolio, or simply thinking about owning a business, the path isn't always easy, but there's wisdom in the journey. If you like this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with friends who say, I'm thinking of starting a business. Until next time, stay bold, stay real, and keep asking, is owning a business a blessing or a curse? Hey, if you like this episode, don't forget to comment, like, and share.
This podcast was made possible with the support of our sponsors. Find more ways to grow at chieast.org.